All right, let's talk about percentages presented, all right, on polls and studies. Um, when they talk about a third, when they talk about a quarter, then when they're talking about percentages. Uh, I was never good at math. I'm a very intelligent person, but when it comes to math, math has been my arch enemy. It's been a complete enigma to me. And so I think all of the media, whether it's on the uh, indie social internet base, or it's mainstream press and TV, or by studies and research, uh, percentages mean generally nothing for a lot of people because, frankly, I don't think a lot of people understand percentage, and people don't understand the current the current figures. Uh, like I've talked like 350 million, and I was and but I've been I've heard 350 million plus for the population for the U.S., and I've heard less than 350 million, and so more and less. So I always stick with 350. So understand this: if you're doing polls, if you're doing research, if you're gonna put it out there, all right. When you say a third, or when you say a quarter, give actual give an actual number. So like if it's a quarter, so if it's a quarter of 350 million, let me see. Let's see. I'm a little slow in doing math in my head, but that's the point. So give them a solid figure. All right. When you're talking about, I just watched an interesting thing about for American working class and middle class on RT. Well, they gave all these percentages, but it's really just meaningless for a lot of people. I'm intelligent. Don't think because I can't do math in my head or figure out exactly what a third of a percentage, or that I'm in some way too stupid to exist, because that's not the case. So, but uh, what what you need to do is put it in perspective that everybody can understand. So when you say a third, okay, don't go by out of 10,000, or 5,000 or 200 or a couple hundred or 2,000. If you're going to say a third of the American workers, or a third of this, or a third of that, give a more solid frame by telling the numbers, that what that third or quarter or eighth or whatnot or six represents. So this way, people get a better idea of what's happening, what that third represents, what that quarter represents, what that what half. So always put that context in. It's not enough just to give them throw out the percentage, because most people in America, unless you're a mathematician or a banker or whatnot, you're not really gonna know the numbers. You're not really gonna get a visceral picture on what that means. People understand full figures, 3 million, 100,000, when you put it in context with the size of the population of the country, or the size and population of a city, or the size and population of a town, or the size and populations of universities and colleges. They understand that. If you, when you throw out the context and you add and you give them a solid figure, they don't understand. They can't encompass or picture. So, and it's not because they're stupid. It's because it's not something that's commonly used. And by doing that, you're actually going to help frame it in a mathematical way so that people can understand it better. You know, so we have to understand it, because when we get paid, when we get our checks, we understand because we have a solid figure. So this is the way we have to turn it. We can't just simply throw out fractions, and because that's it has no context for people, and so we need to be better with our figures for our polls and all that stuff. Also, when you're talking about certain things, such as the RT one I just watched, they were talking about 77%, more than 77% of productivity. Then 12 and 12%, only 12% increase in wages. But they didn't throw out another context, and that should have been what the inflation cost. The inflated cost of everything that you buy, everything and so on and so forth. So they should have said, well, they were basing this from 1973 to 2017. Well, they should have said, well, since 1973 to 2017, well, your costs have gone up by this amount, and then they should have said, well, because he made the context of let's it should have been with between the productivity and everything else, your wages should have been up to around $20. Well, they should have also said, put in the context of what the actual inflation of pricing for items that we buy, for the taxes we pay, for the for our utilities and everything. So they should have included all of this, and that way it fleshes it out for people so that people understand what the actual impacts. Because throwing out just figures, fraction figures, and percentages is really just meaningless. People need a context that they can understand in their own personal lives. Well, with everything that that people have to deal with, and media and journalists are responsible for putting that context in and giving hard figures that are fleshed out, not just fractions and percentages. That is a framework people will understand. Without that, you might as well be putting out in Cyrillic, because only people that actually study it would understand. So, or Latin, ancient Latin, it's utterly meaningless. And let's face it, with the way they've been taking away funding from schools and basically trying to destroy the public school system, the levels of understanding of mathematics and other stuff like that, as well as the way they teach mathematics, let's face it, it's not really something that most people will pick up on, could even understand in a very personal, visceral way. And that's one way to change the dynamic, and that is to give hard figures, completely fleshed out hard figures. Yeah, you can't just throw out. As I said, I admit I did horrible in math. I could never I could never really get it. Basic math, yes, I can do basic math, but fractions, trig, all that. It's largely meaningless for most people. Well, large percentage of the population, unless you're an accountant, unless you're a physicist, unless you're working for an accounting firm, or you're at the IRS, or uh, you get the point. Or you're in in education, in mathematics, and it's really largely not something that, or engineer. It's not. It's largely something that most people cannot get a clear picture of. So that clarity is meaningless. So let's do a better job with stating when we do polls. All right. Thanks for your time.